It's 1:30 in the morning. Snow is falling outside. It's Christmas. And inside a small house in West Virginia, 9 children are asleep with their parents. In the next few minutes, that house will become a wall of fire. 5 children will be trapped inside it, and none of them will ever come out. Not alive, not dead, no bones, no remains. No trace in the ashes at all. 80 years have passed, and to this day, nobody knows what really happened to those 5 children. This is the story of George and Jenny Sodder. George came to America from Sardinia, Italy, at just 13 years old. Through years of hard work, he built his own trucking company and put up a modest 2-story house in the small town of Fayetteville. Jenny was also Italian by birth. Together they raised 10 children, a full, happy household. But there was one thing that set George apart from most of his neighbors. He was openly, loudly critical of Mussolini and Italian fascism. At a time when some in the local Italian-American community still admired Mussolini, George's outspokenness didn't sit well with everyone. A few weeks before Christmas, a stranger showed up at the house asking about trucking work. Wandering around to the back, he pointed at the 2 fuse boxes and remarked, almost casually, "This is going to cause a fire someday." George found it strange. He just had the entire electrical system inspected, and it had checked out fine. Around the same time, an insurance salesman had come by. George turned him down flat. As the man left, he muttered something close to a threat that the house would go up in smoke one day. On Christmas Eve, everything seemed ordinary. Jenny and the children were decorating, wrapping gifts, the usual holiday buzz. Around midnight, the phone rang. Jenny picked up a woman's voice on the other end, asking for someone who didn't live there. In the background, she could hear laughter and the clink of glasses, like a party was going on. Jenny said it was the wrong number and hung up. But something about it nagged at her. Who calls a house at midnight, on Christmas Eve, asking for a total stranger? One by one, the lights went out. The parents and 9 of the 10 children went to sleep. The oldest son was away serving in the army. The 5 youngest, 14-year-old Maurice, 12-year-old Martha, 10-year-old Louis, 8-year-old Jenny, and 5-year-old Betty were asleep in the attic bedroom upstairs. At around 1:30 a.m., Jenny woke up. The room was filling with smoke. She screamed for George. He bolted up, ran through the house, and what he saw stopped his heart. The staircase leading upstairs was already fully engulfed in flames. 5 children were trapped above it, and there was no way up. George ran outside for the ladder he always kept leaning against the house. It wasn't there. Gone. He sprinted to his 2 trucks, planning to back one up against the wall and climb onto the roof. Both trucks, which had run perfectly the day before, refused to start. Jenny ran to a neighbor's house to call the fire department. The phone line was dead, not burned through, cut. One of the older sons ran to another neighbor for help. Word reached the fire department, which was barely 2 miles away. But the fire trucks didn't arrive until 8 a.m., by which time the house had already burned to the ground. The entire structure had collapsed in roughly 45 minutes. In the morning light, George and Jenny stood in front of a smoking pile of ash that used to be their home. There was no trace of the 5 children, no bones, no teeth, not even the smell of burning flesh. Their daughter Marion later said, "I kept watching the windows during the fire, but I never saw even one of the children. They say you can smell burning flesh for miles. I never smelled it." Investigators closed the case quickly. Faulty wiring. George refused to accept it. His wiring had been checked weeks earlier and was fine. Then where did the ladder go? Why wouldn't the truck start? Who cut the phone line? And the biggest question of all, if 5 children really burned to death in that fire, why didn't the ashes hold a single trace of them? A few days later, the local fire chief claimed he'd found a human heart in the debris. For George and Jenny, it felt like the ground had opened beneath them again. But when the heart was examined, it turned out to be a raw piece of beef liver with no fire damage on it whatsoever. Someone had planted it there, perhaps to make the family stop asking questions, perhaps to close the case for good. George began digging up the site himself, by hand. He removed 5 feet of soil, sifted through every inch of it. Nothing. He consulted with forensic experts, who told him something startling: a house fire lasting only 45 minutes should not have been able to completely destroy 5 human bodies, especially not without leaving any skeletal remains behind. Convinced their children had survived, George and Jenny began chasing every lead they could. They heard secondhand accounts describing a car following the children's school bus in the weeks before the fire. They received reports, never confirmed, of people who claimed to have seen children resembling their own in the following months. One story even placing a girl who looked like Martha at a hotel in another state. None of these sightings were ever proven. The family eventually built a memorial garden on the site of the burned house and refused to ever rebuild there. In the 1950s, as their belief that the children had survived grew stronger, they put up a large billboard along Route 16 with the photos of all 5 children and a reward for any information. That billboard stood for decades. Then, in the late 1960s, nearly 20 years after the fire, Jenny received an envelope with no return address, postmarked from Kentucky. Inside was a photograph of a young man in his mid-20s. On the back, someone had written, "Louis Sodder. I love brother Frankie. A Yale boys. A90132 or 35. Jenny stared at that photo for the rest of her life, convinced it was her son, grown into a man. The family hired a private investigator to trace the letter back to its source in Kentucky. He was never heard from again. George Sodder died in the late 1960s, still believing his children were alive. Jenny kept tending the memorial garden and kept the billboard standing until her own death in 1989. Their youngest surviving daughter, Sylvia, who had been just a toddler on the night of the fire, held on to the same belief until she passed away in 2021, refusing, to her final days, to accept that her siblings had died in those flames. To this day, the Sodder case remains officially unsolved. There is no definitive proof the children were kidnapped, and there is no definitive proof they died in the fire either. What's left is a pile of unanswered questions: a missing ladder, dead trucks, a cut phone line, a fake heart, and a photograph that no one could ever trace. Somewhere between a tragic accident and a carefully hidden crime lies the truth about 5 children who vanished on Christmas morning, and a family that spent the rest of their lives simply trying to find out where they went. If this story pulled you in, don't just scroll past it, hit like. Drop your theory in the comments. Share it with someone who loves a real unsolved mystery, and subscribe for more true stories like this one.